Stop living up to other people's fantasies and projections of you. What's up, everybody? I'm Destry from Knights of Light. I am a paradigm consultant. I help people heal from the soul and teach them to integrate it into their lives by helping them shift paradigms and different realities that have been created around them to help further align themselves with their true selves. Now, what we're talking about today is stopping living up to other people's fantasies and projections of you. What do I actually mean by that? So when we get into relationships, or in any type of relationship, really, let's speak on the romantic one for a second. So when we get into a romantic relationship, when we first come into that relationship, we are our true selves, right? We have no obligation, no nothing, anything is there, and we are our real selves. So when we step into it, a lot of us come into the relationship with a fantasy of what the other person should be eventually. And we've all heard the concept that people try to constantly change each other into what they would more prefer. But when you speak from both sides, like let's say I'm the person projecting the fantasy or the reality onto you, I'm projecting something onto you that doesn't align with you just because it will be more comfortable for me. But in reality, I really loved the person that I first stepped into the relationship with. And that alters the relationship in itself. But when you're the person, and I've done this many times, being in a relationship and trying to please the person, trying everything I can to make them happy, so I start to alter myself into the person they would maybe rather me be. Now, it may not be real, it may not be any of that or any of those situations, but that's how I'm perceiving it. And they have this fantasy of this projection of what they really want me to be, so I try to live up to it without really steadily being my authentic self. I start to lose myself in that transition. And when we're not actually being ourselves, we're trying to be somebody else, it really affects our state and our true alignment when we're trying to be aligned with ourselves. And we get into this position inside the relationship where we don't know where we are, we don't know who we are, and we start to totally lose ourselves in this alternate person that has been perceived upon us. And the whole relationship starts to falter and kind of fall apart because one person is trying to change the other person, and the other person is trying to live up to that, but it's not who they truly are. So it throws them out of alignment and more out of whack, and both people start to separate even more because the whole polarity of the situation is completely off. So when we're in these situations and we realize that's starting to happen, we need to stand there and step back for a second and realize that the person we truly are is the person that's actually going to make the other person happy, regardless. Now, in some situations that doesn't always happen, where some people, like say a parent really wants you to be something else and they don't think you should be doing what you're doing. And if you try to live up to that projection or that fantasy of you, you're going to end up living a life that is not truly aligned with you, and you're going to be truly unhappy. So we have to move it forward into really truly being who we are in our authentic selves and staying that person, especially in the romantic relationship. If we lose ourselves in someone we're not, the relationship will die and the relationship won't be there. And then you're left in this situation where you don't even have a relationship with yourself anymore because you're not you. You're living up to this 3D reality that doesn't align with you at all. So we have to, then more self-work comes into it where we have to realign ourselves back into this person. But we can get stuck in this constant loop of constantly trying to change ourselves inside every relationship that we have, being a weird chameleon, if you will, and never really trying to figure out who we are, and we get stuck into this system and this loop of not knowing who we are because we're constantly trying to be somebody else for everybody. When in reality, the people that all these people want is really just you, because you are everything they want. They just may not totally realize it yet, and you don't realize it yet, because a lot of us don't actually do enough of the work to actually be comfortable with ourselves inside relationships. We have we struggle actually showing our true selves. So we have to alter ourselves to please these people because we think the person that we're being or the person we originally were is not good enough. But that person is always good enough. It's always been a good enough because that's the person that attracted the other person in the first place, that original frequency that you were. Now, when you shift into the frequency of being somebody else, that's why the relationship changes, because you've changed your frequency and they've projected a whole new frequency onto you. So both sides actually have to do the work and actually start realizing this. I know the video was saying stop living up to other people's fantasies and projections of you, but it really goes into both sides, and both sides can totally relate when they realize the one person is constantly trying to change people in the relationships that they're going into, and the other person over here is constantly trying to please the people they get into a relationship by changing themselves in different matters, just to try to please the other person because they don't think their self is good enough. So there's two people in the relationship, the projector and the person that tries to be that projection. And it doesn't align with anybody. And that's one reason where we can see where a bunch of relationships fail. Because one person doesn't feel good enough and the other person is trying to project something onto them. Now, we can say that the other person just wants the best for the other person, and doesn't realize the effect that they're having when the other person is struggling and trying to be something else and just totally loses themselves in this constant loop, in this cycle. So both sides really need to look at it in two different ways. One, stop projecting. The other one, stop trying to be the projection. Because the original person that is here, your true self, your soul, is the true aligned version that when you are that person, you are going to totally align with and grab everybody who loves that person, especially if you constantly keep being that person. Now, if you're in a relationship where somebody doesn't like that person anymore, then don't stop being yourself to try to make it work, because whoever you are and who you will truly align with, that's who you need to stick with, because the true person will come along, and we need to realize that and stay aligned with ourselves, because our missions and everything when we step into here is we got to keep raising our frequency and being the better version of ourselves, not the better version of what somebody else thinks we should be. All right, I love you all. Thanks for joining me, and remember to stay woke and continue shifting the paradigm.